So is this a debate even worth having? We have 2 points of view. Carmen Fott is a professor of linguistics at Pitzer College in Claremont, California, and Mauro Mujica is chairman of U.S. English, a group that believes immigrants should speak English. He emigrated to the United States from Chile in 1965. Is this a cultural, Mr. Mujica, is this a cultural or a legal debate that we're having here?
It's a cultural debate, I think. I mean, all immigrants know that we come to this country and that this country is an English-speaking country. It shouldn't be any surprise to anybody that this is an English-speaking country. Part of assimilating or part of integrating, which is a word that I prefer, it's to learn the English language, the language of all Americans, people who came from all over the world and became one nation and who are able to communicate with each other in spite of all their heritage in different countries. They can talk in one language, English. And English, as a matter of fact, has become the global language right now. Not because English is better than other languages, it's because it's convenient to be able to travel anywhere in the world and use a world language.
Professor Pitzer, I'm curious about your opinion about that too. Are we having a cultural debate here or a legislative one?
Oh, absolutely, it's a cultural debate. And I actually agree with much of what Mr. Mujica said. I do think it's very important for people to learn English, and I do think it provides many economic and other opportunities. I just don't believe that making it the official language is the best way to accomplish that.
Why not? Why wouldn't the federal government be expected to weigh in on something so critical?
Well, first of all, the government absolutely can weigh in on something so critical. For me personally, I think it'd be nice if they consulted with linguists before they did so. But in any case, you have to, of course, see that passing a law making English the official language of the United States does not teach one single person English. If they wanted to propose a bill to set aside huge amounts of money to fund ESL programs all across the country, I would be extremely in favor of that, strongly in favor of that, and so would most of my linguistics colleagues. The question is whether this is a good way to accomplish that.
Mr. Mujica, is this the way you're supposed to be accomplishing this, by legislating or by coming up with extra money for English as a second language?
Well, you can't do everything in one bill. It's bad enough to try to pass one thing in Congress. If you add all sorts of other things that you would like, it's impossible to do anything.
Well, beyond Congress,
so
the broader idea.
So you have to do it I'm an architect, and we're building the foundation right now. And you have to do it in steps. We're all for ESL. We're all for getting more money. But first we have to recognize that this is an English-speaking country, and then we have to begin providing funds to take care of it.
There are 27 states which already have laws on the books which mandate English as the national language. What difference would federal intervention make?
Well, it would create a clear policy that in the future we're not going to be doing everything in the country in 322 languages that according to the census we have here. So once we say, okay, English is the language of the country, it's the national language, then let's go and fund all sorts of projects to teach English to the new immigrants.
Professor Fott, in California where you live, there has been a law like this on the books since 1986. What difference has it made?
Well, I personally don't think that the law in California is really comparable to doing it on the national level. And I think the problem with passing such a law on the national level is exactly what we were just talking about, that it's not really about English, it's about the other languages. I'm all for encouraging the speaking of English, but I don't believe this amendment is about that. It's exactly about what Mr. Mujica just said. It's about not speaking the other 352 languages. And that's the part that I disagree with, because this is a country that's been founded on religious, cultural, and linguistic tolerance. And the minute that we begin to restrict the use of other languages, I think that we're taking a step backwards.
Mr. Mujica, is this cultural and linguistic intolerance we're talking about?
No, this law doesn't restrict anybody from speaking another language. I speak 4 languages. I'm learning Russian right now. I speak Spanish with my American wife and my children. This has nothing to do with other languages. This only has to do with government activities. We encourage, U.S. English encouraged any American to learn other languages. It's a fantastic gift. But when we're talking about government, the government has to decide that we have one flag or we have 15 different flags. The government has to decide, you know, major things. And this is a very major thing, that this country from the very beginning kept English as the common language. We began acquiring lands from France and from Russia and from other places, and still those people, and from Spain and Mexico, and those people began speaking English. It's a matter of integrating everybody as a country.
So is the debate that we're having today different from what we've talked about in the past about English only? Is this different?
No, English only is a pejorative word used by the enemies of official English. We at U.S. English would never agree to something called English only. I would be the first one to be against it.
Because it would forbid people.
Yeah, it sounds completely ridiculous to say that we're a country where we can speak only one language.
Professor Fott, do you feel that this debate, just step aside from a moment from whether the federal government should be involved or not, do you think there's anything else underlying this debate, the fact that it never goes away, the fact that it is something which seems to touch so many buttons whenever it comes up?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think it is a debate that's come up over and over again in our history, from Benjamin Franklin worrying that we'd all end up speaking German, to every time there's been a new wave of immigrants to the country. In tide with this reaction to immigration in general, there's been a reaction related to language. It keeps coming up over and over again, and if this bill isn't passed this time, it probably will come up again in the future. And I think it's a perfectly natural human reaction of anxiety to people that are foreign to us, languages that are foreign to us. It's natural. If I hear people speaking about physics and I don't understand what they're saying, I can feel a little anxious and left out. And I don't think it's coincidence that this amendment is coming so close after so much news about immigration and all these debates about immigration and the borders and so forth. I think it's intimately tied to that, and it's tied to anxiety and fear that people have. But just as it keeps coming up, we can use this again and again as an opportunity to be more culturally aware of the resource that all our languages represent.
When you say anxiety, so did Senator Reid take it too far when he said it was racism?
Well, let's say that racism is one of the possible results of anxiety. It may not always be that everyone who supports this amendment is racist. I certainly wouldn't say that. But, you know, it's a kind of xenophobia, I think, of fear about other languages and the possibility that they'll take over English, which there's absolutely no evidence for it in any way, shape, or form, and that's why the Linguistic Society of America passed a resolution against declaring English the official language of the United States, because we don't feel that it's endangered, and we feel that in fact it's a way of restricting other languages. Maybe not all by itself, this amendment, but as Mr. Mujica said earlier, in steps, in stages, this could lead to first restricting those languages in the government and then in other settings.
Mr. Mujica, do you think that English is endangered?
No, I don't think it's in danger. I think the country's in danger of being split up along linguistic lines and unless we do something. This is a new thing, and it has nothing to do with coincidence that this lady mentioned. U.S. English started 23 years ago by Senator Hayakawa, himself a linguist. Mm-hmm. He was already worried 23 years ago. It had nothing to do with illegal immigration bills in Congress or whatever. The problem is that unless people who come to this country begin assimilating and integrating the way that used to be, we are going to separate along linguistic lines. We're going to lose some states where mostly another language will be spoken.
Are we here? I'm sorry, Dr. Fott, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you're right. I mean, if it were the case that that things were changing and we were speaking less and less English because there was a larger population, let's say, of Latinos in certain states, I could see why people would be very upset about that. But many, 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 many linguistic researchers have studied patterns of language acquisition across the country, and current generations of speakers from other countries, including Spanish-speaking countries, are losing their mother tongue just as quickly as previous generations.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave the debate there for tonight. Thank you both very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.